The night the forest gave Darien back to the world, the winds changed across Illyria. The trees whispered warnings. Wolves howled in mourning and fury. Fires in the hearts of villages flared high, and then died to embers. People woke from nightmares they did not understand, speaking only the name, Darien. He had returned. And he was no longer just a man. Caer Eldril, once proud seat of kings, now stood as a cold monument to treachery. Its towers bled red banners, marked with the sigil of Lord Varric, a broken crown wrapped in thorns. The city had become a place of fear. The forests beyond had grown strange and restless. Roads twisted. Scouts vanished. Even birds refused to fly over the northern hills. In the heart of the forest, Darien prepared for war. No longer clad in the humble leathers of a hunter nor the trappings of court, he wore a cloak woven from leaves that never wilted and a crown of living branches upon his brow. His bow, once simple and worn, had been reforged from silver wood and strung with smooth thread. And at his side hung Ilarion, the blade of kings. But Darien's true power was not in weapons. It was in presence. He walked as if the very land followed. Deer approached him without fear. The wind bent around him, and the shadows obeyed. The forest had chosen him as its warden, but it had also made him its weapon. Kaelin, ever faithful, returned with news. Lord Varric had entered into full alliance with Empress Selena, and her forces now marched westward, razing everything in their path. Illyria's last true free stronghold, Greenhold, lay directly in their path. They had little time. Darien knew he could not defeat Selena and Varric with swords alone. He needed allies, old ones. He traveled into the Heartwood, the sacred, forbidden core of the forest where mortals had not dared tread for centuries. There, deep beneath roots as thick as towers, he met the Ellerin, the ancient forest spirits who had once guided Illyria before mankind rose to power. They were not welcoming. "You are flesh," they whispered. "Greedy. Loud. Forgetful. Why should we help you now?" Darien did not plead. He knelt and placed Ilarion before them, then bowed his head. "I am not here to ask for a throne," he said. "I am here to protect what you gave us, life, land, balance. Help me, and I will ensure the world remembers what it owes." The forest answered with silence. And then, one by one, the great trees bent toward him. Leaves fell like rain. The pact was made. The Ellerin would ride to war. Greenhold stood on the brink of ruin when Darien arrived. Its defenders, farmers, woodsmen, a few remaining loyal knights, had no hope of holding against the approaching tide. Selena's army had grown monstrous, beasts of ash, warlocks wreathed in flame, soldiers with burning eyes and empty souls. But at dawn, the forest marched. Stag-born warriors led the charge, followed by dryads cloaked in bark and thorn, elemental beasts, and spirits of old. Arrows rained like starlight. Roots burst from the ground to drag enemies beneath the earth. Wolves struck from the mist. And in the heart of it all rode Darien, crowned in green fire, his eyes glowing with the fury of the wild. Ilarion cut through flame as if it were smoke. Selena's magic faltered against it. Her beasts fled from it. And for the first time in her reign, the Empress of Flame knew fear. But victory came at a cost. Kaelin fell in the battle, struck down protecting Kaelis, who now led the Queen's vanguard. Darien wept for him beneath a sky red with fire and swore to end the war with his own hands. The final confrontation came at Caer Eldril. Darien led his people through the burned countryside, the forest following in his wake. Trees sprouted overnight. Rivers returned to their paths. The land began to heal even as it marched to war. Selena waited for him atop the throne once stolen from his bloodline, crowned in flame and veiled in shadow. Their duel was one of legend. Steel met sorcery. Flame clashed with root. The great hall of the Eldril Palace shattered around them as powers older than kingdoms collided. Darien fought not as a king or warrior, but as the vessel of the forest's will. In the end, Selena fell, not to a blade, but to the truth. Darien spared her. "I am not here to destroy," he said, "but to restore." He offered her peace, even as her magic faltered. But she refused it, choosing to cast one final spell, a curse meant to tear the forest from him, to break the pact. And so Darien did the unthinkable. He sacrificed his connection to the forest. Gave it back. In doing so, he severed her spell, saved the land, and banished Selena to the ashes. But the cost was grave. He was no longer the warden. The forest would live, but not through him. His powers faded. The creatures of the wild returned to their ancient paths. The wind no longer answered his call. Darien became mortal again. Years later, Illyria stood whole. Reunited. Peaceful. The nobles governed in councils, the people had voice in the court, and the land was guarded not by one ruler, but by many hands working in harmony. Kalis served as high marshal. Statues of Kalin watched over the rebuilt gates. And Darien? He stepped down from the throne. He returned to Thornwood, to the edge of the forest where it had all begun. There, he built a cottage and lived quietly, teaching the children to track, to listen, to respect the wild. Some say he still walks the woods at night. That the animals recognize him. That the wind still carries his name. He was no longer king. But he would always be the hunter. And the land would never forget. Years had passed since Darien laid down his crown and vanished into the woods of Thornwood. His name had faded from the lips of kings and courtiers but lingered in the songs of bards and the dreams of children. Though he was no longer king nor warden, the land still remembered him, and so did the people. But the man himself had changed. He lived quietly, tending the forest as one tends an old wound, gently, patiently, without expecting praise. He built traps not to kill but to study. He carved paths for wandering beasts. He grew herbs, collected rainwater, and watched the seasons turn like pages in a book he had once written with blood and fire. And he was alone. Until the autumn the winds brought her. Her name was Seren. Darien first saw her at dawn, her silhouette ghosting through the fog with a longbow slung over her shoulder and a white fox padding at her side. She moved with the poise of someone who did not need to be noticed, and with the silence of someone who had lived too long in places where sound meant death. She was hunting, though not for food. Intrigued, Darien tracked her through the forest for hours before revealing himself, not with a weapon, but with a question. "Why does your bow point north when the game walks west?" Seren didn't flinch. She turned slowly, her eyes the color of old firelight, amber and quiet and unreadable. She studied him for a long moment before answering. "I'm not hunting beasts," she said. "I'm hunting memories." And then she walked away. Darien didn't follow. But he wanted to. Over the coming days, they crossed paths again. Once at the river, where she was teaching her fox to fish. Another time on a high ridge, where she watched the sunset in perfect stillness. She never spoke of her past, and Darien didn't pry. But he knew the signs, how she watched the horizon, how she tensed at sudden noises, how she counted exits in every clearing. She was like him, forged by war, softened by loss, and never fully healed. And slowly, without realizing it, they began to share their silences. They hunted together, never speaking more than needed. He brought her rare herbs, she left him carved tokens on his doorstep, small wooden animals with delicate features. When winter came, she built a fire outside his cabin instead of sleeping alone beneath the stars. That was the night he asked her, "Why do you still carry your bow?" Seren looked into the flames. "For the same reason you still sharpen your blade. Habit, hope, maybe fear. Maybe all of it." Darien understood. One night, a storm broke over Thornwood. Wind howled like ancient beasts, and lightning split trees in half. Darien's cabin held, but barely. In the chaos, Seren arrived, soaked and shivering, her fox limping behind her. He took her in, tended the fox's leg, built the fire higher. They sat across from each other as thunder rolled overhead, saying nothing. Until she broke the silence. "I was once a shadow in Selena's army." Darien didn't speak. "I never believed in her. But I followed orders. I did terrible things. When she fell, I fled into the forests. Hunted by both sides. I thought maybe if I could survive long enough, it would mean I deserved to. Darien looked at her, not with pity, not with judgment, but with that same storm-gray gaze he had carried all his life. We all carry ghosts, he said. The forest forgave me. Maybe it can forgive you too. That night, for the first time, they didn't sleep apart. Spring came, and with it, change. Together, they rebuilt not just the cabin, but a life. They planted gardens, raised hives. Saren taught Darien to carve birds from wood. Darien taught her the lost whistles of the trees. She laughed more. He smiled more. And slowly, the forest that had once made him a king and nearly taken everything from him began to give something back. Not power, not glory, but love. They never married. There was no ceremony, no vows, no crown. But one summer night, beneath the stars, Darien gave Saren a gift, his old bow, now strung with a strand of silver hair from the white stag he once chased in youth. She accepted it with tears in her eyes. I never thought I'd belong anywhere again, she said. You don't belong anywhere, he replied, gently brushing a lock of hair from her cheek. You belong with someone. In time, tales of Darien and Saren passed into legend. Children spoke of the hunter and the flame, who lived where the world ended and the forest began. Lovers would carve their names into trees, hoping to find the grove where the two once danced beneath moonlight. And though no one could ever find Darien's cabin, sometimes travelers would see strange things in the woods: a fox with a limp, a woman with a bow, a man with eyes like stormlight. They say the forest watches over them still. But those who truly believe know this. The Hunter King found peace, not in a throne or a crown, but in love. Thus ends the final tale of Darien. The hunter who became a king. The king who became a legend. And the legend who found love in the quiet heart of the wild.